Can one simple page change the way you write forever? Okay, sure, it's one page described by an entire chapter in a full book, but still, pretty impressive. That book is the ever-popular Save the Cat, and the page is the Blake Snyder Beat Sheet, or BS2. The eponymous outline Snyder developed after finding the 3-act structure a bit too sparse to keep his stories on track. Snyder identified 15 story beats common to successful movies and squeezed them into a one-page template with just enough room for 1 or 2 sentences per beat. Once he'd developed each beat of his story enough to create that concise description, he'd be ready for the next step in his outline process or to pitch the movie. If you read Save the Cat, and every screenwriter probably should, you'll find a lot more absolutes like this 1 to 2 sentence rule. Snyder did not lack for confidence in his screenwriting theories. But you really don't need to be as rigid as the book suggests to benefit from the ideas. While the BS2 was developed in response to the inexact nature of the 3-act structure, it didn't abandon the acts altogether. Just like the hero's journey, the BS2 is another outline split into 3 acts that have been given new names. The first of which is called the Thesis. In a diet ad, it's the before picture. A weather report, the calm before the storm. It's the world of our hero as it is and always was, until something changes and our protagonist decides they must act. The first beat of the Thesis is the opening image on page 1. Snyder actually specifies pages or ranges for every beat based on a 110-page script, but explains they're proportional. If your script is longer or shorter, you would adjust these accordingly. But these are the exact sorts of absolutes I mentioned before that I personally wouldn't worry about. The opening image is the first impression of your story. It can set the mood and tone, like the slasher film Halloween, starting with a long, ominous POV shot of the killer observing his first victim. Exterior, interior, Myers' house. Night. Subjective point of view. We move toward the rear of a house through someone's POV. Or the comedy Liar Liar, beginning with a lighthearted mix-up of our protagonist's job title.
Oh, I'm sure you don't mean a liar.
Well, he wears a suit and goes to court and talks to the judge.
Oh, I see. You mean he's a lawyer.
The opening image can also establish the scope or scale of a film, like Inside Out opening on a newborn and pushing into the literal mind of a child. Interior, hospital, day. A newborn baby swaddled in a blanket held by her parents. Push in and zoom into her head. Compare that to the epic planet-spanning adventure set up by the massive spaceships of Star Wars. A tiny silver spacecraft, a rebel blockade runner firing lasers from the back of the ship, races through space. It is pursued by a giant Imperial Star Destroyer. But maybe most importantly, the opening image establishes a starting point from which the audience can measure change in the characters and world over the course of a film. A change that usually ties into the next beat, the theme stated. Snyder asserts that in the first 5 minutes of a well-structured screenplay, someone will pose a question or make a statement that is the theme of the movie. But even the example beat sheets from the Save the Cat website show the timing of this beat has a ton of variance. By the way, this site is a great resource to study structure, link in the description. Sometimes the theme is almost directly stated.
They pushed the boundaries of what was known, and they paid the price. But that is the only way to live, Bella.
Other times it's more abstract or inferred, like how a life or death situation
isn't that an extinction level event
will force characters to explore what's important in life. But a movie should always be about something. Even the most popcorn anodyne blockbuster should still make a statement.
You know, nothing's more powerful than the love of family. But you turn that into anger and resentment, nothing's more dangerous.
The opening image begins the setup of your story, a 10-page section that usually includes the theme stated, but needs to accomplish much more. This is where we meet the hero of our story.
What's your name, little boy?
Hiro? Hiro Hamada?
And where they start to reveal their flaws.
When are you going to start doing something with that big brain of yours?
It's also where we begin to see what's missing in their lives.
Oh, what would Mom and Dad say?
I don't know. They're gone. They died when I was 3, remember?
And start to establish the stakes of the story.
We push the boundaries of robotics here. My students go on to shape the future.
And develop the character's goals and aspirations.
I have to go here. If I don't go to this nerd school, I'm gonna lose my mind. How do I get in?
We set up these characters and ideas so that we can tap into them as our story unfolds. I like to think of the setup like preparing a firework. If you light a fuse on its own, it'll spark but fizzle out. But if you take the time to pack the charges, set the fuse, and everything else, then that little spark will grow into a dramatic display. That spark is a beat Snyder titles the catalyst, but you might have heard called the inciting incident, trigger, or call to adventure. This is the moment that upsets the world we've established and puts the story into motion.
Naive little hick with good grades and big ideas decides, hey, look at me, I'm gonna move to Zootopia, where predators and prey live in harmony and sing Kumbaya. Only to find, whoopsie, we don't all get along.
And it often takes the form of new information.
I feel bad for the guy. Just hope he doesn't get wise. Well, if he hasn't figured out he's a human by now, I don't think he ever will.
Or a life-altering event. Wham! A massive section of antenna slams into Mark out of nowhere. He's lifted off his feet and yanked away into the storm. It happens fast. 1 second he's there, and then he's gone. After the catalyst comes the debate section of our story. Our hero's last chance to question their new situation and feelings brought on by the catalyst.
This is insane. Why is this happening to me? What I do? Nobody do anything.
It's a debate because it raises a question the character must answer. Usually some form of, can I avoid this?
I thought I was the only one. You're like me. I don't want to be.
I don't think you have a choice, kiddo.
Or can I make this work?
Once Warner sees me as a serious law student, he'll totally want me back. It's a completely brilliant plan.
But isn't it hard to get into law school?
The debate culminates in a decision to take action, which breaks us into Act 2. As Snyder puts it, we leave the old world, the thesis statement, behind and proceed into a world that is the upside-down version of that. It's Antithesis. But because the two worlds are so distinct, the act of actually stepping into Act 2 must be definite.
This is it. This is what? If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
But the hero shouldn't be forced into the new world. Right or wrong, they need to make the choices that lead them there.
You are gonna have to keep hanging out with them like nothing is wrong. Can you do it? I can do it. Okay, let's rock this bitch.
After breaking into Act 2, we take a bit of a breather from the A story and begin to develop the B story. This is often a love story. Claire Cleary, the bride's sister, walks down the aisle. She's very attractive and John takes notice. Keeping in mind that a love story can also be about a non-romantic relationship.
We'll split it 70-30. 70 for me, 30 for you for putting up the $1,000 and for handling everything on the business end, your CFO.
The B story and these characters' relationships can then be used to explore the themes and ideas of the story directly.
You're afraid to let yourself be happy.
Why can't you give me credit for this? This is a big thing for me. I never had a relationship with a woman that didn't involve sex. I feel like I'm growing.
Or at least highlight it through their contrast to the protagonist.
We have 3 days at best before the helium leaks out of those balloons.
Whoa.
And if we're not at the falls when that happens, we're not getting to the falls.
I found sand!
Snyder describes the fun and games section of the story as the promise of the premise. It's the core of the story that will show up in the trailers and marketing materials. This is where we get our first close-up encounter with dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. Tim reaches the clearing and sees a triceratops, a big one lying on its side. It has an enormous curved shell that flanks its head, 2 big horns over its eyes, and a third one on the end of its nose. Where we get our first cat and mouse game with the creature in Alien. She stands, doesn't see the alien on the ledge above her. It drops onto her. She screams, twists. The alien drops to the floor, then lies motionless. Where Tom and Summer date and flirt and begin to fall for each other in 500 Days of Summer.
This is fun. You're fun.
Thanks.
This is usually the section of your story that gets people interested in seeing it in the first place. The midpoint is a moment that happens at, you guessed it, the middle of your script. But more important than the location is that the midpoint raises the stakes of your story.
Sean.
Look, Liz, this is not about you and me, all right? This is about survival. We need to be somewhere more secure, somewhere on the ground, somewhere we can stay alive.
The fun and games are over. The midpoint is either a false victory where the protagonist thinks they have everything figured out.
If we could somehow harness this lightning, channel it into the flux capacitor, just might work. Next Saturday night, we're sending you back to the future.
Or a false defeat, where their new world seems to be collapsing around them.
What is happening? Peter Man from Bruno's vision. She's in and she's gonna destroy the magic and now we're all doomed!
After the midpoint, the bad guys close in on our heroes.
It's the bad guys.
Snyder calls this the toughest part of the screenplay and claims there's no method to get through it other than to just muscle your way. But that's not super helpful, so let's look at some examples. Closing in can be as literal as the bad guys pursuing our heroes.
Send every jumper with a counterpart in the area. Now!
Or as abstract and personal as our hero being overwhelmed by responsibilities. Jackie gestures to the parking lot, where a news crew is unloading their van.
My stuff's important too.
Or even a dangerous new physical barrier or growing time constraint.
The next bridge is 6 miles. We'll have to divert.
I can't, sir. I don't have the time.
When bad guys can mean anything from goons to disasters to internal struggles, the most important thing here is that the chances of our heroes succeeding generally get worse until they hit rock bottom. Snyder considers the all is lost moment to be a mirror of the midpoint. When there's a false victory at the midpoint,
this is it. This is the answer.
There will be a false defeat at the all is lost moment.
Leave her alone, you bastard! You got take him in back, all right? I'll be right there.
Skinhead match in 3D slug Marty and drag him away. And when there's a false defeat at the midpoint, everyone looks at the vision, then to Maribel, and crack, crack, crack. Cracks ripple seemingly from Maribel around the whole room and everyone's powers fritz and spasm. There will be a false victory at the all is lost moment.
Oh, she needed me to ruin her proposal, and then we did all this, and the candle burned brighter, and the cracks. That's why I'm in the vision. I'm saving the miracle.
But how can all be lost if we're in the middle of a false victory? The book doesn't really explain this idea beyond saying the midpoint is either a false victory or false defeat, and the all is lost is the opposite of it. But after studying films with down midpoints, I realized the false victory doesn't actually happen at the all is lost moment, but instead leads into it. Maribel finally has a breakthrough with her sister that begins to repair the cracks in the home, the false victory. As they hug, Maribel realizes the candle has begun to glow brightly, the cracks receding. But the unrealistic expectations of her uncompromising abuela undermines the victory.
The crack started with you. Bruno left because of you. Luisa's losing her powers. Isabella's out of control because of you.
Leading to the actual all is lost moment. In the aftermath, Maribel looks down to see the candle go out. Then, a tiny squeak as the house shutters that just saved her life wave an injured goodbye. And as Maribel looks up, devastated, the house dies. The down midpoint film Snyder does discuss in the book, What's Up, Doc?, is matched with a false victory when the musicologist Howard Bannister attends a reception to accept the grant that he's been after the whole story.
Ah, there they are, our 2 stars. Congratulations, Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Larry.
But a mix-up of cases leads the event into chaos, jeopardizing his life and professional reputation in the actual all is lost moment.
I can't find my rock.
Let's save the cases.
Which ones?
So we always have a low point here. But if you had a false defeat at the midpoint, then there will be a false victory before we hit that new low. After all is lost, we need to see how our characters react in the dark night of the soul. It's often an opportunity for reflecting where our characters recognize their faults and shortcomings that led them there.
Oh, this is all my fault. I should have freed the genie when I had the chance.
But it's also important that they realize they must continue their fight.
I, for one, am not going to stand by and watch as Ronan wipes out billions of innocent lives.
Even if they don't yet have a plan to win.
And unless they can steal the lives of children, when the sun comes up, they're dust.
Yeah, but how can we make the sun come up? We've got Danny.
To break us into Act 3, the hero will need to discover how to deal with their problem. This often requires a bit of help from supporting characters.
Okay, you lost Lillian. You got another best friend sitting right in front of you if you'd notice. Huh? Now you gotta stop feeling sorry for yourself. Okay, because I do not associate with people that blame the world for their problems, because you're your problem, Annie. And you're also your solution.
And usually ties the protagonist's internal struggles to the external story.
I just miss her, I guess.
Yeah, I know you do.
But sometimes, all a character needs is the right information.
But if you don't get me what I need, the last thing you'll see before I make your children orphans is the bullet I put between her eyes. Now, Patrice St. Clair.
Close up. The name Patrice St. Clair is typed into a computer screen, then a security code. A dossier comes up for Patrice St. Clair. The most important thing, as Snyder puts it, is that an idea to solve the problem has emerged.
Where are you going?
Back to the restaurant. They'll fail without me.
Why do you care?
Because I'm a cook!
The world of synthesis is at hand. All of the third act, the synthesis, is the finale. There is a second beat in the BS2 that we'll cover, the final image, but it's actually just a part of the finale, the last part, which means a lot has to happen in the finale. It's where the hero wraps up the entire story. But the specifics of how they accomplish that are pretty open. Blake Snyder did develop a 5-step finale later on, but it's not included in the popular book. Instead, he gives a few guidelines. In the finale, the bad guys should be dealt with in ascending order, meaning before the hero can fight the big bad, they first need to defeat their underlings.
You didn't think it was going to be that easy, did you? You know, for a second there? Yeah, I kind of did.
The 17 Crazy 88 reinforcements come running into the restaurant and, with drawn swords, surround the bride. We should also see how our characters have learned lessons on their journeys and overcome their flaws or mastered their tics.
I gotta get around there. That's right. All right. I'll go in there for Dorothy. Wicked witch, oh no wicked witch. Gods and no gods, I'll tear them apart.
While many of our characters can have these sorts of arcs, it's important that the hero ultimately takes the lead in the finale.
Sir, is there anything I can do for you?
No. This is something I have to do myself.
And that their actions here lead to an emotionally satisfying change in the world, often reflected in our final beat. Just as the midpoint had an opposite pair in the all is lost moment, the final image is the opposite of our opening image, proof that change has occurred and the whole ordeal actually meant something. The slasher film Halloween opens with a POV shot of Michael Myers watching his first victim from the yard. But it ends with a POV shot looking out of the home, where the defeated Michael has disappeared and fled from the neighborhood. Loomis's point of view. The backyard, the neighboring yards, the street, all are empty, quiet, dark. There's only the sound of wind swelling in the trees. Michael is gone. The coming-of-age story Inside Out opens peering into the mind of a newborn, but the final scene marks childhood phasing out and the beginning of adolescence.
We've been through a lot lately, that's for sure, but we still love our girl. She has great new friends, a great new house. Things couldn't be better. After all, Riley's 12 now. What could happen?
And while Star Wars opens on an oppressively large Star Destroyer hunting down a small rebel vessel, it ends with the celebration of the Death Star's defeat and a new hope for the rebellion. R2 beeps and Chewbacca growls with happiness. They turn and face the assembled troops, who all enthusiastically cheer. Now, can you follow these 15 beats methodically and write a great screenplay? Absolutely. But is it the only way? I think even Blake Snyder would have admitted there's more than one way to skin a cat. Or is it save a cat? Which is why you should check out this video on one of the other popular approaches, the 22-step story structure from the Anatomy of Story.